While I was busy fermenting wildlife on Pelagos, Marc snuck back to Lignumis and did some upgrading behind my back. I guess we better see what he's been up to. Welcome to Laurence Plays Factorio Planetary Pioneers. The first problem was down in the forestry area, and is something that I honestly thought we'd already fixed. With the burner agricultural towers, if you use a single burner inserter to load both the seeds and the peat fuel from this belt, you can run into a problem due to the tower always requesting seeds even when it's full. You can see that here. The seed inserter is holding a handful of seeds over the tower when it can't dump them in because the tower is full. And if we look inside the tower, we can indeed confirm that the seed store has a full 10 in it and hence can't take any more. This means that the inserter can't pick up extra fuel either for itself or the tower because its hand is full. That makes perfect sense. However, I thought that once the inserter empties its hand, which takes less than a single fuel for either machine, it would then check its requirements and the tower's requirements, and if either was low on fuel, it would think, aha, I need to get fuel and seeds. And then because the peat is on the closer side of the belt, I expected it to grab the fuel. Our original design had shown issues because the seeds were on the near side, and that meant that the inserter would constantly grab seeds until something ran out of power. But I thought these side swaps between the lines, ensuring that the fuel was always closest to the inserter, would solve that problem. Let's run a test. This inserter is holding lots of seeds. Let's take the fuel out of the tower and then let it run. And, as expected, after the final seed is put into the tower by the inserter, it then grabs some fuel and puts that in. This is exactly how I expected it to work, and how it's been working ever since we left Lignumis. However, it appears that we hit some kind of weird edge case. I could imagine this happening due to an interrupted peat supply, or perhaps it was to do with the hand size increasing. A burner inserter can now pick up 8 items at once, so it won't load more fuel until the tower is down to only 2 blocks of peat. But somehow, the system failed. Marc has modified it to ensure that this won't happen again by swapping the single loading inserter for a pair, one for each item type. It seems a bit of a shame to have to do this, but sadly reliability beats elegance, and this will make for a much more robust system. I'm also reminded of the joy of the wooden belts, which had such short undergrounds that we had to have the belts run below the tower rather than running them through on the same row as we've used elsewhere. And they're so slow! This wood crisis had caused a cascading concern all the way through the planet up to the blue circuits, and so no rockets were being made, and therefore no science packs being shipped. No wonder Marc was concerned. He also connected the bottom 2 rows of plantations to the output belt, since apparently they weren't doing anything with their wood. Still not satisfied, his next task was to speed up the rocket launch capabilities of the moon. The silos were all packed with productivity modules to make the rockets as cheap as possible. There's no point in wasting valuable and slow resources, and back when I last looked at the moon, this was absolutely fine. Yes, building a rocket was very, very slow, but the rate of consumption of the steam science packs over on Norvis was also pretty slow, so I didn't mind. The system could keep up. Since then, the science labs have expanded enormously and have been upgraded to higher quality biolabs. This means that the packs are consumed significantly faster than they were before, and so Lignumis was struggling. Marc has fixed this by putting in a phenomenal number of beacons up along the side here, all with speed and efficiency modules. The speed modules each give a 50% speed boost, along with a power increase of 70%, but the efficiency modules take some of the edge off that by applying a power reduction of 50%, giving a total of only a 20% increase. Yes, percentages like this are added in Factorio, not multiplied. The beacons also have a distribution efficiency of 1.5 times, increasing those numbers by a further 50%, and this one is multiplied. Having this many beacons affecting a single machine does mean that their effects are reduced, however. The bottom silo has 8 beacons around it, so each one only has around a third of its normal effect. However, more beacons does mean more effect overall, just less effect per beacon. In total, this gives a speed increase of a little over 200% and a power increase of about 80%. A bargain! This all gets combined with the modules in the silo. There are 8 productivity modules which increase energy consumption by 80% and reduce speed by 15%, whilst giving a productivity of 10% each. That's 640% more power, or 725% with the beacons, and a final speed increase of over 90%. That's a lot of power, especially when the rockets start their synchronized launch displays. So, in summary, many modules, many beacons, many numbers, and an electrical bill visible from orbit. No wonder we're in a cost of living crisis. Still, it halves the time to build a rocket whilst making nearly half of the rockets free, and that's the important thing. Okay, I lied. The power production is also an important thing. So, Marc has upgraded that as well. At this stage, he didn't want to do a big upgrade to nuclear, probably because that would be too drastic a change to make to my planetoid without being requested to make it, and also because it would require fuel to be brought in from Norvis, and that's an additional supply to set up. So, he's expanded the solar fields and the accumulator racks, and if we take a look at the power graph over the last 10 hours, we can see that the total accumulator storage has been slightly more than doubled. On the 1 hour view, you can see the solar struggling to charge the accumulators at first, then as that was expanded too, it's now able to fill them up during the day and to keep the lights on at night. It's interesting to see the consumption graph here too. The Igrian science producers are using around half the power of the entire moon, probably because they're quite advanced machines, with the rocket silos also showing repeated spikes each time a spaceship arrives. They're launching often enough that they're just part of the normal power draw, rather than us seeing a big dip in accumulator power on launch like we used to. This is actually quite interesting. Most of our planets have massive amounts of power available to the extent that I don't generally have to worry about it. Okay, sure, occasionally we have to build another 3 reactor blocks on Norvis or a handful of extra turbines on Gleba, but those feel smaller and easier than massive solar fields, probably because everything complex on Lignumis has to be transported in. Or maybe it's all because Tristan tends to take charge of power and expands it when I'm not looking, so I never run out no matter how greedy I am. That could well be it. The significant increase in demand on science has meant that the science enhancers have seen a significant increase in demand for magic fluid. Marc has sort of fixed that by putting speed modules in the unbarreling machine, since apparently it couldn't keep up before. This seems all very well, but I'm a bit worried about the rate it's being brought over from Igris. Watching the ship approach, we can see that the pipe is now completely empty before the ship actually turns up, so science production will grind to a halt. There is a decent amount buffered, so this might be okay, but I feel like we're scraping the bottom of the barrels. We could increase the number of barrels that get loaded and requested to try to keep the level a little higher, or we could replace the spaceship with a faster one. Either way, it would increase the fluid per hour by quite a bit. As you can see here, the barrels have now all been emptied, the magical steam is still on its way back out, and the level of magic fluid in the pipe has been pushed up to about 40, but now all the barrels are empty, and it's dropping rapidly, and the magical steamship is still at Norvis building up a supply of ammo. This looks like something we're going to have to keep an eye on. Hopefully it'll be okay, but check back at the end of the video to see. Talking of spaceships, Marc has also tinkered with the Maluna transport, Mike's first proper transport ship, which I hijacked to add in the Lignumis run as well. I guess he felt it was a bit pointless doing the full circuit every time one of the science packs ran out, so he set up an interrupt-based system. This means that the only permanent stop is Norvis, and the ship will wait there until one of the 3 packs runs out. Yes, these packs do all look very similar. When a pack runs out, the ship leaves Norvis, which triggers it to check the interrupts. At least one of these will be active, and that will tell the ship where to go. It then flies to the appropriate moon, where it will attempt to load up, timing out after 2 minutes, and then return to Norvis to continue unloading the science. The only downsides I can see to this are that if the ship needs packs from both moons because it's unloaded everything, it will stop at Norvis on the way from one to the other, but since it has to go via Norvis anyway, this won't slow it down very much. Also, if there's a crazily high demand on steam science from Lignumis or a supply shortage, because that interrupt is first, it will trigger first every time, and so the factory might become even more starved of space science. But I don't think that's a serious concern. When the factory's in that state, we have bigger problems to worry about. In order to even out the rocket supplies a bit, rather than just shoving all the science packs into the first chest, Marc has set up the inserters to watch this piece of belt up here, and only load science into the chests when there's something on it. This works surprisingly well and seems to result in fairly similar amounts of packs being put into each silo. A slightly more in-depth and accurate system would load whenever there's less than the average amount of packs in a given chest, with a slight modifier to prevent ties, but as a simpler solution, I think this is quite elegant. Rockets are really noisy. The Lignumian natives are very sensitive to noise, but really don't like it. So when Marc increased the rocket launch cadence, it meant that we were releasing a lot more noise pollution, and it was getting out to the closest nests. This wasn't ideal because it meant we were starting to get attacks coming in. Now, the enemies on Lignumis are a little bit threatening when you only have wooden bullets to plink at them. However, as another one of Marc's Lignumian tasks was to complete the roboport and power coverage of everything inside the walls, we now have a smattering of lasers all the way around, and so I think that means the little wriggly guys are basically harmless. But still, we're trying to be good, and that means limiting pollution where possible. Norvis has its tree block wall, which is woefully insufficient, and so it's backed up with an ever-increasing level of artillery range research. On Pelagos, we're trying not to use electrical machines, but we are still cleaning up the old pollution from before. Gleba is sadly just using landmines as defence. The attacks are coming in regularly, and because landmines exploding counts as a loss, we're getting a lot of warning sirens. Castra is also using artillery to keep the data collectors outside pollution range, but since it's the radar that actually produces the pollution there, it's very difficult to keep it inside the walls. So you see, we are trying to be at least a little bit ecologically friendly. And so, I finally realised Marc was making changes over on Lignumis, because he told me so, and so I went over to take a look. On Lignumis, by far the most effective way of keeping the noise in is to build a wall, and so I thickened up the wall by the rocket silos to help keep the noise in, and it worked. We're no longer annoying our neighbours. Look, they're all sleeping peacefully. Aww. That was remarkably easy, but then I guess this is still the starter planetoid. I'd still quite like to expand the blue circuit production on this moon at some point. However, there have been many higher priorities, and I think all the planets we've been to have been more than capable of producing their own, so we've not worried about it. Maybe we'll do that when we get to some of the Tier 3 planets which require resources to be brought to them. We shall see. That will mean even more rocket launches and even more angry neighbours, of course. And on that noisy note, it's time to end the video. I hope you found it interesting and enjoyed a bit of a break from the coconut frenzy of Pelagos. Don't worry, we'll be back there soon. There's still stuff to do. Speaking of stuff to do, we'll be back to stream some more on Monday at 7:30 PM UK time as usual. Come along to find out what planet we're on by that point and to see us pioneering more puzzles. If you'd like to try your own hand at them, you can grab the Planetary Pioneers mod pack from the Factorio mod portal. Use the seed 11111 to get your own copy of our universe and planets. I'll also be back on Wednesday at 8 PM for a solo stream. As of writing, I'm playing Factorio Fun Mode, a very silly take on Factorio, and I have a number of plans for other streams when I finish that one. These videos will continue to come out on Thursdays and Fridays, so please make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. Aha, the ship has returned, and we've still got 5 units of magic fluid left in the pipes.